Welcome to Bearing Your All. Patrick's brought the hot tub inside, and we're going to be changing up what we do here at Remap for a little while. Patrick, just drag that pool right over there, and let's get a little risque. That's how hype I am for the Bears, baby. And also seeing that big old lineman just get naked brought back some memories of like how much we all loved getting naked when we were on the old line. So I'm like, let's lean into it. Let's get into that football culture.
Do you want to go to time that is?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the appointed time, shirts off.
I'm a little tan. I'm gonna be so bad. San Diego for a couple of days. 30.
Yeah, 30.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Remap Sports and Sports Adjacent Podcast that sets out to disprove the notion that people with lives dedicated to pixels jumping across the screen can't also be unhealthily interested in what nerds condescendingly refer to as sports ball every Super Bowl. Rob, I start off every episode with a question. Why is your shirt still on?
Because I'm a coward, Patrick, to be quite frank. And also because I haven't prepared a song. But one day, I'll have my song prepared. And it'll be go time.
You have your song prepared just in time to get a grade 2 hamstring sprain and no longer be a main character of a show.
Yeah. That was unfortunate.
We are here. Sports has been on a bit of a soft hiatus for a couple months now as the NFL season obviously wound down back in the early spring, late winter, and some of the Bears stuff. The NFL has a brief period where very little happens before everything happens again. The NBA wound down, and we're not going to record a podcast about the Celtics winning the finals. So, punting on the NBA until next season. And right now, NFL is gearing back up. The Olympics are happening. I don't know when Team USA plays next. Is that today, like as we're recording? Because they got the first seed, so they got to skip the first game, right?
I just go on Peacock and I'm like, do you have a replay for me to watch yet? And that's how I follow the Olympics.
Oh, did they just played? They just played the quarterfinal. The United States 122, the Brazil 87. Rob, my hope that the Olympics would perhaps have some friction in it because of the expansion of the international sport of football does not appear to have completely panned out so far. As the U.S., the most amount of friction it seems to have experienced was in the preseason when they probably cared less about what was going on.
Yeah, well, also the big drama there was leaving Tatum on the bench, right, for a game. That was the big early.
It was unclear to me what exactly that came from, other than just I think I saw Steve Kerr say something to the effect of, "We have a lot of really good players, and we have to rotate." Like if you crunch the numbers over bench players versus players who were actually playing, that Team USA wasn't doing anything fundamentally different than what the rest of the Olympic teams were doing, but there was something profoundly funny that it does feel like more than other recent NBA championships. This one has just been completely memory hold. Like, did you have a dominant regular season? Yes. Did you cruise to the NBA finals, both on that talent and also because of some very fortunate injuries? Yes. Did you then more or less convincingly win those finals? Yes. Did anybody outside of the Boston area give a shit and or elevate players like Jason Tatum to a status that otherwise would usually go hand in hand with such a season? Like, no, we did none of that. We just sort of said we're tired of Celtics basketball and moved on to the next season, which is extremely funny.
Yeah, it didn't help. Like, it was a really lopsided series, which was unfortunate. The Mavs had been really exciting earlier in the playoffs when they were more evenly matched. Watching them just get like rinsed off the court, not the most dynamic thing. And I do think there's a bit of, I think the Celtics ended up in this kind of shitty place where they never got the job done in their, oh, look at these scrappy upstarts. They're coming along. They're developing fast. So precocious. They didn't do it when that was the narrative around the team. And then they rearmed for their championship run, sent Marcus Smart to, I don't know, Alaska, and basically we're like, we don't need the culture guy. We don't need we don't need the we don't need the guy who's sort of been the emotional heart of the team for a while. And that proves to be like the good move. Drew Holiday, I think, was the person they brought in, and Drew's great. So it ends up feeling like all the Celtics could do was either be a huge disappointment that everyone would laugh at, or an inevitable winner that nobody cared about and was deeply uninspiring. And then I think, and this is why the Olympic story kind of blew up, I think there is something about Tatum that has NBA people unconvinced. Like even that night, remember they made the big deal revealing a billboard over the highway in Boston. It was the classic Nike. Here's the big campaign, and it's showcasing like now what do the non-believers have to say, or something like that. But anytime you sort of have your marquee star basically being the narrative of like nobody believes in me, it kind of raises the question of like, yeah, why is that? And then so that sense of doubt.
There is a kind of try hard quality, I think, to Boston in general. Tatum specifically, I think that seems to rub people a bit of the wrong way. I don't know if this is, I guess, would we lump Tatum in the generation of like the Kobe imitators? Like I'm just going to be the modern era Kobe, which when you chasing that feels a little weird. And that's putting aside all of Kobe's personal life stuff. It's more just like the Mamba mentality, like that whole stuff that seems to have driven a certain generation of superstars that came up in the wake of Kobe's ascent.
It's like Kobe's legacy is going to be those, because I think it is one of those things where it has very little to do with the man and the person who was the center of really incredibly credible sexual assault allegation. Like basically that happened, everyone knew it was extremely gross, and then everyone just moved on. But Kobe, as like the space he occupied as a player, was such a maximalist character, like the most driven, the most intense, the most overconfident, the most like I'm the guy, and just like being the guy by sheer force of will, even at moments where it's like maybe you should not be the guy. And I think that's been it's a weird thing, because it has inspired a lot of imitators. A lot of people are like, I'm going to be on that. I'm going to be like Kobe. I'm going to put myself at the center of this thing. And that always rubs a lot of people the wrong way. And also, there were a lot of moments where like, Kobe could be the guy, but I think, as people have sort of delved into like analytics more, I think there's probably greater understanding that, yeah, that's not actually the right way to play either. So I think there's a little bit of like disdain for the volume shooter team leader who's just like, I'm gonna put myself at the center of this thing, whether or not I'm efficient, and you're gonna live or die by like the randomness of how efficient I'm gonna be in a given evening. But I don't know, it worked out for the Celtics. They were a really good team, and I think some of what made this such a damp squib of a finals was just the cards didn't fall in such a way that there was a credible challenger to them in those playoffs. Like every other round was more entertaining, and then you get to the finals, and it's like, all right, well, I guess now it's just time to watch the inevitability.
Well, and I think there I think it's part of what made the Tatum and Olympic stuff stand out even more is, in theory, there's a vacuum beginning to be created in the NBA in terms of like, who is the face of the NBA? Like when you think of NBA basketball, or I guess as we're seeing in the Olympics, like when you think of like capital B basketball, like who do you think of? And the Celtics having that kind of run, that kind of dominance all the way through the regular season, the playoffs, and then the finals, it would certainly seem like, hey, like this is a moment for a guy like this to become at the center. There's something about his personality that has not endeared him in the same way as a far less acclaimed or accomplished players like an Anthony Edwards, who's just way more fucking fun to watch and root for on a game-to-game basis, especially during that run that happened during the previous season. And like LeBron still hasn't given up that mantle, right? Like it doesn't appear that there's any sort of, I sort of forget because I was too sort of young to understand how these transitions have happened in the past, whether there is any, and maybe you have a better sense of this than I do. Like, was there any sense of like a handing of the baton, so to speak, because we're in the midst of the Olympics, from like a Jordan era to the next, to sort of this Kobe era to, I don't know, like the Curry LeBron era? Like, I'm being overly simplistic in terms of like how we think of the players of that era. But is there any sense of like, hey, like this is your thing now? Or is that something we ascribe mostly with hindsight and history of like, oh, like these are the players that have now come to define that era, and maybe Tatum becomes part of that with hindsight? Or is like LeBron's disinterest in leaving the league, despite like he's still a dominant player, but not as dominant as he used to be. Curry is still a dominant player, and mostly if he has failings in the future, it will probably because he's not surrounded by enough to achieve the same highs. He is a singular talent, but probably can't carry a team like all the way through the finals without like the kind of team around him that he's had for the better part of a decade plus. And so I wonder if part of the lack of a natural transition is this just what happens every time? Like the old guard just sort of refuses to give it up, and then the nostalgic basketball fans don't like. I kind of like watching LeBron and Curry play, which I felt as they exited the NBA playoffs, even though I knew I was just going to watch them take first round exits, or if they made it to the second round, they were just going to get trounced, which is what happened last year. As much as the Lakers gave the Nuggets a run for their money, they more or less got dominated like by the end of it, even if they kept individual games close. I don't know if any of that lands for you.
No, I think it does. I think like some of what you're describing is just the do you know how a lot of American holiday traditions are basically the holiday traditions of baby boomers? And it just like that we have this sort of vestigial like culture around some things that it's like, well, this is just this is just how Americans do this. This is just what American culture around this thing is. But it's actually this singular experience, the singular moment gets reproduced again and again and again because this generation has such a huge influence. I think there's a little bit of that happens with sports where like sports media especially latches onto the comfortable like narrative framings of an era. And so like LeBron has been at the center of discussion around like the future of the league for years, right? It's maybe cooled off a little bit, but like well past the point where it was clear that like where will LeBron go next? What city will he bless with an NBA title? Long after that day was done, he still occupied that space where like to talk about basketball is to talk about the moves that LeBron James makes. I also think something about this moment, I think we alluded to this last time we did a sports show. I think there is I think the Miami Heat, LeBron, Wade era, Chris Bosh, like I think it broke people's brain. And that transitioning to, after a short like interregnum, the Warriors like era. I think those two events kind of, I guess you'd say like, the Kobe era Lakers preceded that, but there's this expectation that like broadly basketball would always be defined by who is the next dynasty. who is going to be just like running up titles and who's going to be the core of players, who's going to be the superstar or superstars who are going to be the core of a team that's just going to dominate the league. And what's funny is I think basketball's been really interesting the last few years because none of that has really happened, but every time one of these teams wins, there's this like expectation. Remember, like after the Bucks won, it was like, well, get ready for the Bucks dynasty. You know, Giannis isn't going anywhere. He looks and that one playoffs, it looked like shit. If he plays like that all the time, like they could do this every year. But nobody can play like that all the time. Like Jordan and LeBron are like unusual characters in that also they like had just incredible physical constitutions for the sport. But it's really building a dynasty is really hard. Having a team that's going to be dominant every year is an extremely rare thing. And I think it's made the NBA really interesting in that there is no one team you can point to that is going to dominate the league in that way. But we keep having the narrative built around the assumption of like, well, who's gonna take over this league. And you step back from that and say, like, the last few years, it's kind of been open, like anybody's game. That's been really interesting. But the focus is still on who is going to be the next combination of like front office and players working together to create what we saw with like the Hamptons 5 lineup in Golden State, what we saw with the Heat. And I'm not sure that's how basketball works anymore, but it is the frame that we put on all of this.
Well, then again, that becomes because when you think of the histories of sports, is it better for the sport? I think there's two questions, right? Like the popularity, like the cultural dominance of a sport versus like I'm a fan of like the sport as like a genre as the athletics of it, like the aesthetic of the sport, the competitiveness of the sport. Is it better or worse for these leagues to have dynasties, like sort of images, histories for people to draw upon? They give them a context in which how to watch. Or is it better that it's kind of a free-for-all? Because what makes things like the Patriots and I guess the Kansas City Chiefs now so fascinating is that you start to take their dominance for granted. But not only is it singularly impressive how those teams managed to sustain it for so long on a sheer sort of like year-over-year talent attrition basis, but the league, the NFL, is constructed specifically to dismantle dynasties. You have to work incredibly hard and have a combination of like skill and luck to maintain streaks in a structure that essentially would like it to be a free-for-all year over year. I think something like the playoff turnover in terms of what teams appear and don't appear like is more than 50% year over year, which means you're getting a wide spread of new people who make it past the regular season. And I cannot sit here and explain to you all of the new sort of like luxury tax changes that have come to the NBA salary cap, but there are things called aprons that I'm sure you have seen mentioned in like basketball discussion. Are you aware of how the first year I ever
heard? This is the first year I heard the term, and it was around the most recent round of like off-season deals. But yeah, this is the first I'd heard of it. No, I don't know. I don't know what the apron is.
The long and short of it is, and correct me if I'm explaining this part of it incorrectly, is that some teams like the NFL have a hard salary cap. There is a number that you are allowed to spend, and there's all sorts of trickery that goes into how do you arrive at that number. But the number is the number. In football, or in basketball, in baseball, you can pay something called the luxury tax, which is if you have a rich enough owner that is willing to eat it, you can spend more than sort of what is called a soft cap of amount of money that you can spend, but you are penalized and then more heavily penalized as you climb that ladder. And the idea is if you would like to continue to pay this amount of talent, you're going to spend so much more money than the average team to pull that off. The Warriors did that for a very long time. Now there is something called the aprons that basically thank you, Kato. Like, for example, I have to look up the specifics, but like if you're spending past what is called like the second apron, it starts impacting your draft capital, where whatever I forget how many years out, but whatever you were going to have in the first round immediately gets booted to the end of the first round. You will pick last, and those are the sorts.
How much
of
do front offices care about the draft?
Well, but they seem to care a lot about figuring out the short-term ramifications of how this is all going to work and how that negotiates into contracts, especially if you have players that are coming up for mega deals. How is that going to play into it? And it's part of the NBA trying to follow the model of the NFL, which is actually, if dynasties happen, that's fine, but we're not going to encourage it. Essentially, it seems to be moving in the direction of, if you just have a rich owner and a lot of talent, you can just spend enough money to maintain it. And that the Celtics are lucky to have won this year, because in the next couple of years, this like new form of balancing the books in basketball is going to prevent you from even managing to keep cores like that together for lengthy periods of time. Or your trades
there's a bit of pay to win in this in that model, but I think I would prefer. I like that there's a place left open in the rules for, well, one, like star athletes get paid something closer to actual market value for the talents, but also for owners to just like push all the chips in and be like, it's go time. Like we're going to win this thing. I think that is like more fun than the alternative, like than the owners who are just like taking up space. Like somebody was mentioning, like they're a Charlotte Hornets fan, or at least Charlotte Hornets are their local team, and that they're immune to sort of the rubber banding like parity attempts that the NBA has tried. So are the Chicago Bears, maybe until now, but in these leagues where it's like the whole thing is designed that like we have a competitive team. Again, like no dynasties, and everyone has a chance to like turn it around, in a reasonable time frame. When you have teams that are like kind of like the teams that are reliably excellent and the teams that are reliably crap, I think become like fascinating case studies, because both of them are doing something that is effectively nullifying the rules that have been set in place to generate a little more dynamism in who's up, who's down. I think with the Chiefs, it's you have the greatest quarterback probably of all time, and one of, if not the greatest coach of all time, like working together. And so like, even as like, well, they can't, even as the situation like deteriorates, and it's like, we don't have anyone for you to throw to anymore. We got some walk-ons from the street. Like, here, can you make these guys work? And any kind of can, right? You have a bit of that, but also then you have the teams that are going to reliably like blow their opportunities. Which, I hope isn't the Bears. But, if losing goes on long enough, if things get bad enough, there's always the chance you turn into the White Sox.
I mean, we'll get to the Bears Hard Knocks in just a moment, but we had some people send in some questions. One thing I wanted, before I get to that, was we're recording this live, if you're watching on Twitch or YouTube, and Donch Edel, which one, terrific username. 2, in the NFL, the salary cap is real and the contracts are fake. Every other major U.S. league, the salary cap is fake and the contracts are real. That's very funny. But that is, I think, a succinct way to put the dynamics at play, which is why oftentimes when you'll see an NFL contract, like, this player is like the highest paid at their position, you need to figure out exactly what that means and how they manage to achieve that, because what every agent and every player is trying to get is they want the headline that they're the biggest, they're the best. And part of the other than just trying to negotiate against the salary cap, it's also how do we get this player the headline that they want while also maintaining what the team is trying to achieve in terms of balancing its books. There was one that came through a couple weeks back. I don't know what player it was, but like the statement put out by the agent was like, highest paid player at the position that has been an all pro like once in his first 3 seasons. And it was like, wow, we're really jumping through hoops in order for you to like be able to have Adam Schefter get paid a couple $1,000s to tweet out this like copy and paste statement from the agent, which is just a wild way it often works in the NFL. Someone did send in a question to sports that just said White Sox sad face. You recently put in a message in sort of our sports chat with Austin that you were looking to sign up for MLB. I think is League Pass the one? Which one? No, not League Pass. What's the MLB one?
Oh god, yeah, and also kind of sucks, right? As a bad reputation because of all the blackout dates.
It doesn't matter. Anyway,
MLB TV, yes, yes.
Is the package you can sign up for, mostly because you wanted to bear witness to history. You wanted to see like a streak that has not been seen in many decades, which sadly, for the purposes of this moment in the podcast, that streak was broken last night as the White Sox beat the Astros. But the A's rather. They wouldn't have beat the Astros. But the White Sox
only the A's could have done this.
Yes.
Yeah, the White Sox are an historically bad team this year. Let's see, about a month ago when I checked in on them, there was, they were the only team to have 2 14-game loss streaks happen in the same season, except one of them didn't stay a 14-game loss streak. It just kept going. And so they were up to, I think, 20 as they flew out for a series against the Athletics. And if they had lost this series, I think their next series would have been played against the Cubs. And they would have had the possibility, if they lost their opener to the Cubs, I think that would have been 24 straight losses, which either would have been an all-time MLB record, or it would have been like a definitive White Sox record, but I think it would have been an MLB record.
So this is from This is from an ESPN story called Worst MLB Record Ever. White Sox on pace for most losses. This is from today, August 7th, coming after the one win that they did have. The 2024 Chicago White Sox are making history for all the wrong reasons. On Monday, they tied the American League record for consecutive losses, dropping their 21st straight game before finally picking up a win on Tuesday night in Oakland. Nearly 3/4 of the way into the season, the numbers are staggering. A .241 winning percentage that puts Chicago on pace for 123 losses. A 28-88 record that is already 41 games behind first place Cleveland in the AL Central, and a negative 247 run differential that is 70 runs worse than the closest team. The White Sox are 28-88. Stare at those numbers and think about them. It's unreal, unfathomable, and unthinkable. They are likely to hit 90 losses before they reach 30 wins. There are simulations here that mention the piece that give them a 99.9% chance of breaking the franchise record of 106 losses that was set in 1970. To avoid breaking that, they would have to win 28 games of the next 40-ish before the regular season finishes out. There should be some sort of psychological study done on this White Sox team. It's crushing. Maybe it goes both ways, where baseball, by sheer number of games played, a singular win and loss can only hurt or provide joy to only to a certain degree, because you might be playing a doubleheader. You might be playing later that day. You might be playing tomorrow. Certainly you're playing 2 days from now. There is just such a longevity to the MLB season relative to, a basketball is more in the 80 game range, right? I think all told, I forget exactly how but baseball is certainly the outlier there. The idea of like coming into work every day, like working on the White Sox. I know they're a bad team,
buddy.
like,
We
you
worked
still
in
gotta go
media.
to work. Yeah, yeah. But we got kind of left alone. There weren't like national headlines about us every single day being like, look at these fucking losers.
Well, yes, and like the fact that like you guys are the biggest losers since they started using fresh baseballs for every play. Like you were the biggest. Like the last time teams were this bad, it was the dead ball era, and like Babe Ruth was a child or something like that. It's grim, and teams aren't supposed to be this bad because to your point, baseball what kind of makes it fascinating and maybe has led to its downfall a little bit as a sport is that it is a ruthlessly statistical game, right? Like it is just the sheer number of games you play. They're going to iron out all as much variance as possible. Like teams are going to regress to their mean performance, right? Like it is just over so many games, over such a large sample size. Who you are is going to that will probably come out in the record. Football very different, right? Like that is a game where a few random bounces can make your team a Super Bowl contender one year, and then send you to the cellar of the league the next year. But baseball in general, the thing separating the worst teams from the best isn't generally supposed to be that big. You know what I mean? It's like the best teams are just going to average out to a few hard won but meaningful, like high percentage points higher of win rate, and then the worst teams are just not going to have that juice, and they're gonna sort of fall away. The Sox are in. This is like basically uncharted territory for a modern MLB team, and it's not like sometimes you're like, well, you can kind of expect this to happen because like it's a rebuilding era, right? They're engaged in some sort of like Hinkie-esque process. There, we gotta blow this thing up. We're just gonna like live in the suck for a while, but then we're gonna come back stronger. My understanding was this was not a rebuilding year. This is not the Sox like trying to blow it up or rip it apart or clear stuff from their books. This just it's like a rogue wave.
Yeah, I had I was at a bachelor party last weekend, and most of my friends there are all Midwest Chicago people, largely Cubs fans. And there's one diehard White Sox fan, always has been, always like the fun outlier, because that's just, depending on where you live in the city, it's sort of all or nothing. Like, it's not usually a mix of like Cubs and White Sox fans. Like, depending on geographically where you grew up, like, you're just going to fall into a bucket. And then all the people you know are also going to fall into that bucket. And for me, that was largely the Cubs. And I got this buddy who's one White Sox fan night. We get out to the bachelor party. He's wearing an Orioles hat. I'm like, what's up? He's like, I give up. The season broke me. I'm done. I picked a new team. I'm rooting for them. They have to be kind of plucky. Haven't won in a while.
Camden maxing.
Like, there's something. It's like it is something to root for. And we'll see how long this lasts. Like, obviously the Sox are in such a brutal stretch that there's no fun to be had by watching any game. Like, there is not there aren't like players to watch, like up and comers. Like, there's not like little things you can highlight as like what happens in a bad season that might foretell future success. The White Sox are just in this bleak fucking hole that they cannot dig out of. And a lot of that comes back to, as he correctly diagnoses, is the fact that the Bulls and the White Sox are owned by Jerry Reinsdorf. They have the same owner. They frequently run into the same issues. Now, I don't think even Jerry Reinsdorf was anticipating the White Sox being as bad as they are. He operates on the principle that he loves the fact that the leagues build themselves whether structurally or in terms of baseball, kind of analytically, around 50-50. You will be average. Maybe you can, if you get in a hot streak, you can get into a wild card and get to the playoffs. But the teams you'll be just good enough for the fans to keep showing up. And that is a quality that Reinsdorf shares on the Bulls and the White Sox. And what happens here, of course, it's very funny. The White Sox go on this historic losing streak at the same time that Reinsdorf is trying to get a new White Sox stadium. There was for a moment, competing bids or pitches from both the Bears and the White Sox organization over trying to get money from the city. And I don't think they should give money to either of them. But the notion that a historically bad team would like a little bit of money, please, in order to build a new stadium is one of the funnier pitches I have heard in a long time. And honestly, I guess I have to respect it. That is a level of disconnect from reality that one could only aspire to.
Yeah, no, the sheer shamelessness of it, of like, you smell that stink coming out of that ballpark. Don't you wish the ballpark were nicer at least? Obviously, it'll still be a landfill, but at least it won't be such a blight from the highway. Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible stuff, and like, the cynicism of Reinsdorf is richly rewarded. Like, the White Sox being this bad is not part of the program, but you saw like the Bulls had like a record season from the attendance perspective. Like Bulls games are wildly popular. Like, and it was so clear.
To 2 of them.
Like, the front office just unplugged the controller and walked away. Like the last 2 years, just like, hang on, I gotta check on something. Puts the controller down, leaves, and everyone's like, it feels like if somebody picks up that controller, this could be a good team. I'm gonna keep showing up.
Why are we passing? It's a cursed form of simming the rest of the season. Well, I suppose. Rob, before we get to the central topic at hand, which is the fact that the NFL season is nearly upon us, preseason starts this weekend, and the new season of Hard Knocks debuted on HBO. The last version of Madden you have pulled up, and we don't know which quarterback is going to be on there. So I would like to take a moment here to boot up Madden and to find out who was on the roster the last time you booted up a copy of Madden NFL.
Madden 20. So yeah, I think I might have, like, this is what I got. This is what was in my PlayStation account. Mm-hmm. I might have one that's more recent, but I don't think I have one from the last 2 years.
But Madden 20 means this is 2019, right? Because they're always a year ahead.
Is this Mitch?
Well, I think so, because 2018
is it Trubisky time?
Sports. It's in the game.
So I think this is Nick Foles. No. 2018 is when they have 2017 is Trubisky's first year. That's with John Fox. They have a really bad season. 2018 they get Nagy, Khalil Mack, and they have a good season. 2019, Rob, is when Matt Nagy dressed in cosplay ahead of the 100-year celebration of the NFL to play the Packers on opening night, the Thursday night kickoff game, and we lost 13-3. One of the most dispiriting losses I have experienced because the whiplash was so intense. From, I can't believe the foundation we're about to build upon, to, I can't believe we already need to get rid of everybody on this team, all happening in a singular season.
It was like, you don't expect a quarterback to be worse the next year.
Uh-huh.
But it happened. And it was like, did we already see the ceiling of Mr. Trubisky that year?
Just trying to knock over my water here. Kato, could you bring down the Madden a little bit in my ears?
Welcome to Madden NFL 20. Here you can select your
the servers for this title have been shut down.
Or accessibility options. You can always change these later from the game settings.
Yeah, who do we have? They're gonna show Mac, right? That's who's gonna be
Yep.
Yeah, they're gonna
Unstoppable force.
Unstoppable force. Yes. All right,
He was, except the NFL just started letting everyone hold him.
That's true. He was getting double teamed and held on pretty much everything.
Oh, that's right. They always force you to start with a Pro Bowl game. Ooh.
What? Can you skip this? Skip this nonsense?
You don't want to see the greatest showcase of NFL talent in football, the Pro Bowl?
I gotta say, as desperate as I get to watch more football at times during the year, the Pro Bowl can't get me. Also, when does the Pro Bowl fall during the calendar? That's pre-Super Bowl, right? Post-playoffs, pre-Super Bowl? It's in between?
I think did they move it around when they switched to the Manning Bowl era?
From right here in Orlando, Florida. Coming up, the AFC looking to make it 3 in a row as they square off against their
Oh, man. Do you think the AFC can do it again? A third time in a row, Patrick?
Downtown at Camping World Stadium. Standing by our broadcast team, Brandon Godden and Charles Davis.
Yeah.
All right, Coach.
All right, hang on. There we go. We can skip.
Oh, thank God. But isn't it just going to skip to the... Wow, look at how the UI has changed.
Well, I haven't played recent Maddens. Like...
Oh, we're about to see a little bit of a comparison to College Football 25. Oh, no! Rod, did you see that man just sink into the ground?
I didn't.
You
Did
missed
someone
that?
just like fall through the texture?
Yes!
Let's head to the red carpet. NFL honors
SF Gray, I think this Pro Bowl was Andrew Luck's last game.
To be the NFL MVP. And let's face it, we'll see him here at the Pro Bowl.
All right, well,
They got
let's
superstar
simulate
abilities.
let's do a series or two here before we get into Hard Knocks and
All right.
back to the pod. I need to see a little bit of what's changed. So we're starting on defense. Okay, I mean, avoid big hits on the ball carrier by using L2 R2 plus square to give up.
Mahomes going to pull it out and keep it himself. And he's got the hook up to Landry. And they get him down, but not before he takes it across the 40-yard line.
Oh, yeah? I'm going to blitz harder.
Start the drive, a gain of 12 and a first
What are you going
down.
to do about it, Patrick?
Come on, Mac.
On first
Get over
down,
there.
Mahomes. His throw.
Oh,
Right. Oh, yeah. That's because he felt that pressure coming off the right edge.
And now it's second down. The starting unit for the AFC, definite Pittsburgh connection on that offensive line.
Oh, wow. It's like they're about to go fight the chrysalids in XCOM.
You know what? I gotta be honest. If you could dump in NFL rosters into the XCOM generator, I would play that.
And he'll be taken down
But
at the 46.
that should bring out the punt team.
Well, quite a front seven for the NFC. Jordan, Donald, Fletcher,
Aaron Donald, Fletcher Cox.
Been here before, as have the linebackers.
It's kind of like who's retired in the 5 years since. Eddie Jackson, I think, got signed. He got picked up somewhere. It took him a while to get re-signed after being
Oh, no. It's a third down. I thought that last one was third down.
Oh no, but you got this. You know, they could give you 8 downs.
And again, it's Mahomes. Oh, he almost.
Oh, come on.
Was that a bear? Hang on, was that a bear?
Is that I think that was Fuller.
That's a throw he'd like to have back. Now 4th down.
That's back when Kyle Fuller was like our best cornerback.
And it's one of the goals of the game. They've got to be effective on pass.
Should have taken that to the house.
Yeah, there he is. Kyle Fuller, baby. He was really good. And then he got injured and kind of didn't do anything after the Bears. I think he went to the Broncos. He followed, oh, what's his face?
Oh, my God, it's Tariq Cohen. Oh,
Aw. No!
Of
course they'd kick it away from him.
They don't want
Recently
they don't want
retired
that.
Tariq Cohen. One of my all-time favorite. Now, the Bears signed him to like a 3-year, 4-year extension, and then immediately his career ended. in a catastrophic double knee injury. It was horrible.
And that flat drop and just kind of kicking the nose of the football, they're able to almost stop it where they want to, like a good golfer can check one up.
They'll run with the Rams, Todd Gurley. Gurley's got the first down and then some.
Wow, remember Todd Gurley?
Yep.
25 yards the pickup there.
Oh, wow. Oh, what it... Rob.
He's an X-Man. Yeah, that's why he's so elusive. He just phases through.
Todd Gurley.
Business to make sure no one can get there and disrupt it.
Is the biggest key the left tackle?
Without a doubt. Control that edge. Get out there. You want that left tackle. If you bring your tight end over there, either way, control the edge of the line of scrimmage. You get a chance to rumble.
5 yards on the
Superstar X Factor. Drew Brees.
Powerful zone ability. Make 5 consecutive passes for 5+ yards in the air. Oh, because he always was throwing over the middle. Like he was the short pass machine. That's very funny.
Because when you're able to do that, and you don't give up big chunks of yardage after the catch. Now you put the offense in a position where every series.
Oh, come on.
Let's activate Drew Brees.
And you tend to stall them out when you do that.
What displeased you?
I should have gotten that extra yard. Come on.
The drag routes are pretty good.
Well, he's a possession. He's a possession receiver.
He is a possession machine. Yeah, that's true.
Brees to throw on 3rd and 1. It's caught. Jones. And he'll be taken down, but not before.
See,
Julio Jones.
give me a real quarterback, and I can do some shit.
Dude, it's so funny watching this. I mean, I know it's the Pro Bowl and everyone is like a 99, but it's so funny watching this compared to Tulane.
Crisply, I like that. Yeah, moving it very.
Now, when they simulate the Pro Bowl in Madden, are they also simulating they're simulating something that doesn't happen in the Pro Bowl? Tackling.
Yeah, and I think this is where the play caller is looking at his play sheet and saying, "Do I have that dagger play?"
Oh, he's taking it to the house.
No, he's not quite that fast. He's taking it near the house.
Catch and run, 37 yards. What a luxury to have a tight end that can not only catch it, but then can run after the catch like that.
What was the old expression back in the good old days that they used to carry pianos on their backs when they were after they caught the football? Someone would stop and bang out a tune along the way as well. But nowadays, these guys are essentially bulked up wide receivers.
Rob? What did you say? What did you just say?
They carried pianos on their backs, and some of them would stop and belt out a tune.
Following the big play, they've got a 1st and goal all the way down at the 10. Again, it's Brees.
Here we go. Oh, Rob.
That's going to wind up incomplete.
He's a possession. Okay, that wasn't maybe well judged. Oh no, I broke Drew's streak.
The Eagles are able to win Super Bowl versus the Patriots or run pass options. RPO is unique because you can run or pass the ball. Practice the type of RPOs, peek, alert, and read in Skills Trainer. Oh, that's nice.
Towards the green zone.
Look who they're showing. Is that because you picked the Bears as your favorite team?
Maybe. I don't know.
Did they swap that? Or is they just thought the Bears needed to be there? The Bears were thought to be good this year when they made this game. And then they were, I think they went 8-8.
Patrick, I don't know what the fuck this is telling me.
Choose run when running towards green zone. Choose pass when running towards red zone. Come on. Thank you, BedSource, for rating.
So now 2nd and 10 after the incompletion on 1st down.
Oh, BedSource is rating, and people are just saying the Chicago White Sox. Hey, White Sox in the chat.
And a short pickup there down to about the 9. Only a yard on the pickup there.
All right,
so
Rob, you're going for it on
Quick
fourth.
slants.
You're going for it on 4th.
Tough 9. We're scoreless after 1.
That's not how the Pro Bowl works.
The NFC with the football here to begin the 2nd quarter. They're on the march, but facing a 3rd down here. Working from the gun, it's Brees. He'll get this out to Barkley.
Oh.
7 yards.
You got to run for it on 4th.
Make it 4th down.
A short game that doesn't get them the 1st down brings up a 4th down situation.
Really nice job defensively.
No subtlety.
Here we go. I formation. Here we go.
The offense staying out. They're going to go on 4th and 2.
I mean, this is what happened in the Pro Bowl. It's just funsies.
Here we go. It's Gurley. And he will fight his way into the end zone
Wow.
for a touchdown.
Fantastic.
His knees look fine to me.
As his guys are first onto the scoreboard here this afternoon.
All right, Rob, you want to switch over to some Bears highlights, and we'll get into Hard Knocks?
Yeah.
4th and goal. This is all.
And oh, he takes off with it. It's a fake. And he is not going to make it. They stop him up.
He could have been faster.
This will remain a 6-0 ball game. I thought the days of the fake extra point were numbered once they moved these kicks back to the 15. Apparently, I was mistaken.
Yeah, I was wondering who was ever going to try to do some
Me. It's me. I'm going to try to do it.
From the 15-yard line to try and pick
All
up
right.
an extra point. I didn't think anyone would ever call this.
All right, we should get into some Hard
drag
Knocks.
us this bad. Let's get into some Hard Knocks. All right, pull up your Bears playlist. Cut off. We want to switch to that layout, or I guess that'll just stay here. Make those highlights bigger than us. That works for me.
Yeah, let me. Where is my Bears playlist? There we go. All right, I'm just gonna change the sizing on this a little bit. All right, and it's a little dirty, but it's
fine.
all right.
All right, here we go. All right. So yeah, this week, Hard Knocks, which is the long running, like I don't know how long has Hard Knocks been going? Hard Knocks season. Let's see. Documentary is going back to 2001. So we're at 20 plus years. This year, for the first time, I think. Have the Bears ever been on it before? I don't think so. I'm looking through the list here. It started with the Ravens in 2001. Many teams have been on it multiple times, but this is the first time that the Bears have been on it. Obviously, kind of for good reason. You know, they drafted Caleb Williams, who is broadly thought to be one of the most talented, in theory, talented quarterback prospects since Andrew Luck. They are the opposite of what is usually a team that is picking number one in the draft. Often the paradox of finding the guy at quarterback is that the reason you have a chance to find the guy is your team was so bad that you are picking number 1, 2, or 3 in the draft the next year. In this case, the Bears were upsettingly bad for, I don't know, the first half of last season, basically pre-Montez Sweat trade. There wasn't a whole ton to root for. You didn't even really have Justin Fields running for it on every other play, trying to break an NFL record. But they kind of put it together in the second half of the season with a decent of offense and mostly a stellar defense. And crucially, the Carolina Panthers, who they traded with the previous season, acquired their first-round draft pick and other picks, and then also, importantly, wide receiver DJ Moore. They gave up the farm to trade up for Bryce Young, put him into a horrible situation, and they were the worst team in football. And so the Bears, for, I don't know if it's the first time in history, but it's a very rare occurrence, had back-to-back number one draft picks, one of which they turned into a draft haul, the other of which they took Caleb Williams. And so this Hard Knocks really centers around, how does an old man become sexy again? What are the options? And is Caleb Williams going to be as good as what's the term in Game of Thrones? The prince who was promised. Isn't that part of the prophecy of this Song of Ice and Fire? Will Caleb Williams be the prince who was promised, or will it end like Game of Thrones did, which was sad, upsetting, and retroactively made you feel like you'd wasted a lot of your time with the show? Rob, there's I think 6 episodes of Hard Knocks. What did you make of this first episode? Did it change your opinion of the team? Where do you kind of sit on both the show and how it reflects our favorite team, our cursed team, the Chicago Bears?
So I feel like just first impressions, they are not as exciting as the Detroit Lions, for instance, which isn't a surprise. Like, the Bears are kind of a boring organization in some ways, and I'm not sure they're stocked with most dynamic people, and I kind of got that feeling watching this as well. Like, there is a degree of corniness to the Bears that I think comes through in this show, and so I kind of like watching this first episode. I was like ready to I can't wait to meet all these people, see what's like behind the scenes, and just see this culture, in its infancy. See the Bears in their chrysalis, ready to emerge. And I don't know. That's my reaction, Patrick. I don't know.
I found it to be a profoundly boring hour of television. Rob, it was as though I was watching our hopes of oh shit, we're going to do streams and recaps of Hard Knocks every single week. We are feasting. I got 50 minutes in the show and I went, there is not a chance that we can pull off doing any of that if this is all this show is going to offer us on a week-to-week basis. On one hand, that bummed me out. It's I don't think that content plan is going to work out. On the other hand, the fact that this team is so profoundly boring is unbelievably encouraging for what is to come. There are a lot of expectations on this team, partially deserved, in many ways manufactured by the hype around Caleb Williams specifically. And what seems to be revealing, if there is any truth in Hard Knocks is not an actual documentary, is like a faux documentary. It is made not entirely hand in hand with the teams that are being documented, but the NFL, the team that being recorded, there is negotiations happening on what is or isn't shown. And so whatever tension is there is going to be there because the team is okay with it. The league is okay with it. And so the fact that the Bears seem kind of corny, kind of chill, there are personalities, but the fact that a depth chart safety that just happens to be married to Simone Biles, good for him, good for her. That's fine. But he's not even, as far as I remember, even a starting safety on the team. That, I think that tells you something about what this team is. It doesn't tell you what they'll be. And what I found it's not as though there aren't storylines to unpack with this team. And I wonder the lack of enthusiasm for this series to engage with, I think, the most fundamental and interesting questions about the team, more or less reveal what it isn't allowed to do at all. This core of this show really should be something around this. Is there are the Chicago Bears so architecturally unsound from the top down that they cannot produce a quarterback? They have for decades taken sometimes flawed, sometimes we make the flaws, quarterback prospects, and broken them. We are unable in an offense-driven league to produce regular offense. And so what does that mean for a prospect like Caleb Williams? And that goes right alongside, at no point in this show do they even acknowledge all of the conversation around Caleb Williams leading up to him being drafted. Many of the, quote, questions around Caleb Williams going to the Bears had nothing to do with his play on the field. It had to do with, honestly, like culture war, generational differences in player personalities and how they handle themselves. Caleb Williams is one of the first players to enter the NFL draft in the NIL era, in which he is already a millionaire and a pop culture figure prior to taking a snap in the NFL. He paints his fingernails. He cried when he realized he wasn't actually going to go to the heights of college football, like sort of like tournaments and playoffs, because USC had a shit team around him. And even though he was still going to be a top draft prospect, he was not going to reach the heights that he wanted to during his career, during his time in college. And he went off to the sidelines after a game, during a game, I forget exactly, and cried with his mother. And this was all seen by like rock chewing football personalities as evidence that Caleb Williams is not going to be able to hack it in the NFL. And so there's not a sniff of fucking any of that in this show, despite the fact that I find that to be some of the most profoundly interesting questions about this team. What does Caleb Williams, his personality, how he carries himself, his image, say about generational transitions in NFL approaches to personality and prospects? And then how does the Chicago Bears, who have not been able to incubate players of this caliber to reach any sort of heights, why is this time different? And this show says, do you want to watch Keenan Allen and DJ Moore dance a little bit? I mean, that is charming. I'm charmed. But that's not necessarily the insight I was looking for.
Well, DJ Moore also like the only person who feels like there is a personality around them and the team has a personality like around him. I don't know. It's so there's a couple things. One is that I think some of it is just the Bears head coach, Matt Eberflus, is just not a dynamic character. And we all got excited. The show makes a big deal out of like, my man has a beard now. Check out this silver fox. Like, whoa, everyone wanted to fire this guy. But then in the offseason, he kind of got hot. And so the show has a whole like little subplot of like, he like let himself go in the offseason, i.e. didn't shave for a couple days. And his wife was like, hey, maybe keep that going on. And new school Matt Eberflus, we're off to the races. And you're like, yeah, no, it's a new vibe. It's cool. And then you see him giving his opening speech to the team as training camp starts. And he may have retired the hits shit, but he is still a boring ass culture guy. Where just a bunch of dead-eyed players just waiting for him to stop talking as he explains like, hey, winners, they form good habits, don't they? And losers, they let bad habits form, right? Always be forming good habits. And it's like, Jesus Christ. Like, do you have any idea how much these dudes have heard this shit since like Pee-wee football? Like this, it's the same. It's the same speech. And you know what? Maybe like football guys who do this guys who go pro often do end up being corny in this way. So I do think on some level the shit resonates with football players to a surprising degree. But I don't know. I'm still watching it and I'm like, they've heard this man, they've heard it, and they've heard it delivered a lot better than this. And like, maybe you should just get out to the practice field as quickly as possible because you are losing these guys. Hey, challenge yourselves. Be 1 of 32, right? How can you be the best at your position? That's a good goal. It's like, yep. Thanks, Matt. Hey, can we get out there and do some reps?
Just QB drills. Yeah, I mean, like some of the most interesting stuff is kind of glossed over, right? Like where there is a sequence where Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator on the Bears, who comes from Seattle, after the Bears fired Luke Getsy, who's now with the Raiders, they're working on Caleb Williams' footwork. right? Like, hey, here's where like your body and your feet are going to be based on where you're going to be throwing the football. That's fascinating. Like that's a lot of what happens in off seasons, especially in transitions from college to NFL, where the cadences are different. Having a mic, a mic in your headset is different. Like none of that nuance is here, and it's odd because, and people mentioned in the chat that actually preseason Hard Knocks is the most boring of all the sort of insights we get in a sort of documentary style over the course of a season, because it is the moment in time in which the teams are most turtling, in which they don't want to reveal anything about what their plans are for the season. That like you'll hear if you watch Hard Knocks, there's a lot of called install. Like install is them installing like how they're going to run plays, offensive, defensive structures, and there are rules in place for when like beat writers are at training camp. There's always a very funny thing where it's like you can't record clips, but then you'll get beat writers drawing like different plays that happen.
Yes.
Not explicitly the formations, but like he threw a cool pass to DJ Moore. And it's like, that's all you can write down because you can't share how it happened. And so you just, if you are absent big personalities during this part of the season, there's just not that much to latch onto. Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Caleb Williams, they seem like cool guys. Like they seem fun to hang around with, but they're personalities, but they're not big screen filling personalities in the way like a Jim Campbell over at like the Detroit Lions head coach is. And I didn't watch. Did you watch the Giants preseason like draft documentary? Like I heard that was actually legitimately fascinating. And then the in-season documentary that I think airs on Amazon. Last year I think it was on the Dolphins. I don't know who's been picked for it this year.
No, I think Hard Knocks in season was Dolphins last year. I don't know what the Amazon one was.
Either way, those my understanding is those are far more revealing because you are just in the mix, and teams end up being more revealing just by the nature of the context that you were dropped into. And so
I got to the Amazon one another try. Just a quick aside, like I've never I watched the Dallas Cowboys Amazon one, and it was such a Jones family piece of corporate propaganda. I was like, I don't think I need to ever see this again as long as I live, because it was just like it's football's first family. Now here's watch Jerry and his kids like talking about these players, and so I fell off it. But if the later ones got good, I do love a good in-season documentary.
And so it's weird. I find myself at the end of this. I mean, the highlight of the entire episode was the Caleb Williams Chicago Bulls mashup. There wasn't much for them to show. You know what I mean? Like, there's only so many like cool highlights that could be seen. But it was a neat idea, like, as a piece of kind of a cultural artifact of Chicago and Chicago sports history. It was neat. That said, anytime they do something like that, all it does is make me profoundly sad, because it is just a reminder that Chicago as a sports city has produced so little since the 85 Bears and the 90s Bulls, that when you want to feel something about these teams, you have to just go back to that well. Now, part of that is you're doing it to a broader audience, right? Like, what are you going to pull on the 2016 Cubs? Like, they finally won a World Series. Like, I get it. But it's both pulls at my nostalgic heartstrings and also is profoundly upsetting because, well, there's just nothing else to pull from. Like, what are we going to talk about? That magical 2018 season? No, because everything after that fucking sucked.
Yeah, I think, speaking of nostalgia, I did kind of dig, even the opening using the old NFL Films voiceover, who Liv Schreiber does, like, that is not how Liv Schreiber sounds to me, right? Like he is doing an NFL Films voice when he narrates these things that I think is meant to be. I forget his name, but the dude who did all those old voiceovers and using his old VO, it's cool because like that was the voice of like a lot of old Bears highlight packages. But for me, Patrick, I think the thing that the thing I was most interested in, the scene that like did kind of get me, was Nick Saban showing up.
Yeah.
And talking to Matt Eberflus. And it's obviously a thing that's set up, like, here we're going to have Eberflus, sitting at the feet of the master and listening to his pronouncements. Always, he too is learning, just like he's trying to mentor Caleb Williams. But the thing that jumped out at me is that, like, Nick Saban's a legitimately interesting person to hear talk about football.
Yep.
And the scene with him and Eberflus reminded me of, there's a scene in Master and Commander where there's an officer who's like struggling, just cannot get his shit together. And everyone kind of knows it. Like he's lost the respect of the crew. He's kind of failing out there. And Jack Aubrey, the consummate like commander here, sits the guy down and is like, "What's up?" Like basically like, let's talk about the issue. All right, here are my instructions. Like here's how you need to change your approach. And it's clear just even in the scene that like the concepts that are just like, they follow naturally. Jack Aubrey can just embody them naturally. They're just words to this guy. He mouths the sayings. He repeats like, yeah, I'm getting the lesson. He's taking his little notes, but it's not going to get through. It can't. He just doesn't. He just doesn't have that thing. And it reminded me a little bit of that as you have this stage scene where Saban and Eberflus are talking, and it kind of sounded like Saban was trying to warn Eberflus more than like just like give his thoughts, where he was explaining, why do quarterbacks fail in the NFL? It was like, I think he's like expectations. The guy, and he basically in between the lines, he's basically saying like, your guy in particular is facing wild expectations. Like this is not a good situation. How much is sitting on this kid's shoulders? And it dovetailed with something. Caleb Williams and DJ Moore were on First Take the other week, and Stephen A. asked, like, why can't, maybe he can do the CJ Stroud thing. None says he can't turn around team 1 year and like lead them to the playoffs. And DJ Moore, in that segment, he's a kind of reserved guy. He doesn't talk a lot. It's interesting. He's always been a good interview. Like reporters seem to like him, and he's a great locker room dude. But he's a bit reserved. But when they finally like lured him out, drew him out on the subject, he basically said, he's like, I don't like the CJ Stroud comparison. He's like, I just don't. That's his story. That's, CJ is CJ. Like Caleb's going to be Caleb, but like it's not. They're different situations, and I don't think those are good expectations. I don't think they're fair expectations for like what's supposed to happen here. You just have to like let and see things unfold, and that was kind of a moment where I realized like, like Moore is also nervous about this. Like the level of expectation and like, come on, Caleb, like fix this like right away. Like CJ Stroud did it. They were bad, and now they're good because Stroud got there. And I feel like Saban in that scene is also calling out like these are not conducive to developing as a successful player. And the other thing he pointed out was just like, most people aren't going to strive for excellence. He's like, they're just not. Like people want to get by, but like they want to survive, but they are not going to like challenge themselves for excellence. It's a rare person who can do that. And successful teams need to find people to challenge players in that way. And it felt to me like Saban was also indicating you need to find the players who are going to do that. That it kind of needs to come from within the locker room. And I swear to God, what was landing for me in the scene was Eberflus thinks it's like, yeah, no, that's why I'm a culture guy. That's why I'm telling them always be better. And I'm sitting there and being like, I think Saban might be telling you why this approach doesn't always work. Like why you have to like cultivate the leaders in the locker room rather than be the leader. And it was just one of those moments where I'm like, I am not sure that Eberflus gets it. I'm not sure he was like internalizing the things that Saban was very politely trying to like wave some caution flags around. That was my take on the scene.
I'm not sure he needs to, though. I think because that's juxtaposed against DJ Moore signing a extension, 2 years into a 4-year deal to essentially be with the Bears through the duration of Caleb Williams' rookie contract. The fate of Caleb Williams, the fate of the Chicago Bears, this era, is tied up in DJ Moore and Caleb Williams. And I think the optimistic spin on what DJ Moore's comments about the weight of expectations on CJ Stroud, because of CJ Stroud, which, as Historical Gamer in the chat points out, was the best rookie season of all time. That's unfair. Like, the Bears can have a wildly successful season with Caleb Williams having normal ups and downs. And still, I have expectations, even with Caleb Williams struggling. It'll be the first year, Rob, where like I'll be excited to see a in the hunt graphic that is a little exaggerating the position of the team that I root for. Like, that's where I want them to be 2/3 through the season. I think you can look at DJ Moore's comments not as somebody who is worried about the season as much as that's who you want in Caleb Williams' ear.
Yes.
That's who you want to be Rome Odunze, too young. He can't be that guy. Hasn't been there before. I think the expectation is that Rome Odunze becomes the DJ Moore of this team on a contract extension as they go to a new version of the team, assuming all things worked out. But DJ Moore is the big brother. DJ Moore is the, you don't need him to tell Caleb Williams to knock it off. That's not what but you do want someone who's like, hey, he's the one that picks Caleb Williams up when things aren't going well. He did that with Justin Fields. Part of what fueled so much of the Bears are making a mistake by getting rid of Justin Fields was you are going to destroy the locker room. So much of what destroyed the locker room was DJ Moore up until the very end saying, this is my guy. He'll always be my guy. And I'm going to be next to Justin Fields as long as I'm next to Justin Fields. And I don't think that makes him a turncoat. It doesn't make him he didn't backstab Justin Fields. He did what he was supposed to do. He's a player coach. Soldier. He's a player coach. He is the thing that gives me I'm totally with you on Eberflus. I don't think he's a disaster. I think he's the kind of team coach that will rise and fall based on the quality of the team. I don't know that he moves the needle individually that much like an Andy Reid. But I don't think the team will be bad because of him. I don't think they'll be particularly good because of him. I think it'll be a lot of other collective factors that and that's most NFL teams. It's rare that you get the player QB combination in which they lift each other up. But I came out of the end of that episode in the season realizing now more than ever how important DJ Moore is as exactly the kind of leadership position you're talking about. And frankly, could Eberflus even be that guy, even if he was a more dynamic, interesting person? I don't know that you can. And that's why they paid DJ Moore all the money that he did, because they see him, I think, rightly, as a critical piece in having him survive this year. And surviving this year is not having a good football year. It is surviving the weight of expectations that come with winning and losing as a team and as a player. And if he comes out the other side of that, not broken, that will be in no small part because you had a player that was able to pick him up and got, that's what he did with Justin Fields. I mean, he did right by Fields until it was his time to do that with Caleb Williams.
I think you could argue DJ Moore also saved Eberflus to some extent because it got off to such a bad start last year. And I remember the reporting from the locker room always noted that DJ Moore was completely unbothered by how shitty things were. And he was just he was telling the reporters the same thing he was telling his teammates, which was listen, you go, if you're on football for a while, it goes like this sometimes. Like, trust the system. Like, we're a good team. We're better than the record is. We've had some bad games. Like, it's going to turn around. Just trust. And people could buy that coming from DJ Moore. Whereas I think, like, at that point, like, nobody had any faith in Eberflus. Like, at that point, it was like, that would have just been like, okay, well, if Flus is just like frozen now, repeating like just trust, and like the ship is going down. But like DJ Moore was just like, yep, that's football. It's a land of contrast. And what do you know? It is, because the season turned around. They were in the hunt. Long shot in the hunt, but they were for a while. And yeah, that is what is so valuable about a player like that, where at the moment where that locker room could have collapsed. And I think if you take DJ Moore out of that equation, I think the locker room does collapse. I think that team implodes in a way that's like, well, we gotta reboot the entire thing. It is so lucky that like his performance alone justifies a ridiculous contract. But yeah, like this is the sort of guy where, as he transitions into like more of a mentor stage of his career, he's perfectly built for that too. He's someone the Bears clearly need, and smartly clearly value.
Well, I think that's going to take us to the end of this special edition of Sports Live. Hopefully people enjoyed this version. I think we haven't really done live podcasts. Have we done a live podcast before? I don't know.
I think only the E3 stuff, which dubiously counts.
Right. So, it's don't take this as a signal that like we're going to suddenly start doing, Remap Radio Live or anything like that. But I don't know. We thought sports uniquely sort of fit. Maybe it'd be the kind of thing that we could adapt as the season rolls along. So we'll see. We did do a live sports. When we've interviewed Alex Navarro, but we didn't turn that into a podcast, did we? Like, we're recording this, and this will also become a podcast. Either way, we don't normally do podcast live stuff at the same time. So hopefully people enjoyed this. What else do we have going on this week? Tomorrow we'll be recording Remap Radio. We'll also be I'll be doing Daily Dad Rock throughout the week. We'll also be doing Dragon's Dogma on Friday. Hopefully people enjoyed that. I don't know. Well, we'll see. Rob and I have wanted to gear sports back up with the preseason and then also with Hard Knocks. I don't know that Hard Knocks is going to give us enough to talk about week to week. Rob,
this was just a sluggish opening. It's just like the Bears 2023 campaign, like it's about to pop off. I'm sure they're going to be riveting next week.
We didn't get a chance to talk as much about the Olympics as I wanted to, just because we're sort of tight for time for an obligation I have as we're nearing the end of this. So the Olympics will be done by the time we want to record next. So maybe we could do some highlights from that. People can write in about some of their favorite moments from the Olympics. I've been watching a lot of it over the past 2 weeks. So I think maybe even if Hard Knocks doesn't give us enough to go on, there is probably enough happening in sports for us to revisit it, especially like, who doesn't want to talk about Pommel Horse Guy? So we'll see. We'll look
the
back
Muffin Man.
Who's the Muffin Man?
I think it's like a Danish Olympian who started posting TikToks about him, all the double chocolate muffins.
Yes. So maybe we'll have people write in with some of their favorite storylines, and we can. Also, last little thing, Rob, the bachelor party I was at last weekend. Was a lot of Midwest people, and we were just looking for somewhere to end up at the end of this boardwalk. And my buddy was like, at the end of the boardwalk, after a really beautiful, like 1.5 mile walk along the sand, like is a Bears bar. And sometimes if you go to place, like you can look up in different cities, like if you've moved away from your hometown, like, hey, we are a quote like blank team bar, and it's mostly just a way of attracting different fandoms, but it doesn't necessarily mean you walk in and it's going to be kitted out that way. This was a straight up full on Chicago Bears bar. Shout outs to the 710 Beach Club. When they do games, they give everyone a shot glass and they pour like schnapps, like Dr. McGillicuddy's, like just the grossest stuff. It's very sweet. Not a ton of alcohol, but goes down smooth, reportedly. By reportedly, I mean, I'm pretty sure that's how my 16-year-old self threw up for the first time, drinking alcohol, playing Super Monkey Ball with a bunch of degenerates at my parents' place. And so we started chatting. The guy was from the Chicago area, from the suburbs, very close to where I grew up. So he gave us little shot glasses. Now, we don't really talk about Ditka anymore for good reasons, but I did think it was very cute that they had these 710 Beach Club Little Ditka shot glasses. So shout outs to the 710 Beach Club who treated us very nicely for a bunch of rowdy Chicagoans that came through. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll be back soon. And until next time, fuck capitalism, bear down.